My wife, Lily, the CEO, remained oblivious to my restored hearing. Right under my nose, she and her newly hired male assistant were plotting to seize control of my company. "He's deaf anyway. He won't hear anything," she'd said. "He loves you so much. He'll believe anything you say. Why don't we trick him into recording a will, transferring all his shares to us? Then, we dump him on a deserted island, dispose of the body, and when we return, we'll be financially free, together forever." But I didn't expose them. Instead, I smiled, transferred all my shares to my wife, and deliberately jumped into the sea, faking a slip and fall, a drowning. After all, nobody suspected our company had been teetering on the brink of financial ruin for a long time. Burdened with debts reaching hundreds of millions, my wife and her assistant would soon be crushed by this colossal debt, living a life worse than death within the office walls. I quietly listened to my wife, Lily, cheerfully chatting with her male assistant, Tom. Over the past year, I had endured countless hardships to regain my hearing, originally intending to surprise Lily at the company. But unexpectedly, she had prepared a grand gift for me. They acted so naturally, without any hint of restraint. Clearly, this wasn't their first time doing something like this. I couldn't help but wonder, how many times had Lily deceived me in this way? Before I could speak, she noticed my unusual demeanor, gently using sign language to ask, "Honey, what's wrong? You look pale all of a sudden." Her face was so natural, filled with concern. If I hadn't personally overheard their earlier conversation, I might have actually believed her. Looking at the gentle woman before me, my heart felt no trace of the affection or guilt from before, only a nauseating disgust. "It's nothing, probably just a stomachache from something I ate this morning," I replied. Hearing this, Tom, standing beside her, immediately breathed a sigh of relief. "You scared me. Looking at your face, I thought our plan was exposed." Lily lightly adjusted her nails, sneering. How could it be? Ken's eardrums were pierced by my own hand. Absolutely impossible to recover. Tom chuckled. "True. I bet that idiot Ken never thought about the car accident that year. Besides just fainting, he wasn't really hurt. And he foolishly believed you risked your life to save him, vowing to never leave and saying he must repay your kindness. It's laughable. If he knew even our marriage certificate was fake, he'd probably die of anger." My hand, hidden in my sleeve, clenched into a fist. A year ago, when my company had just successfully gone public, I was full of ambition, wanting to expand my career. But a sudden car accident struck. I fell into a coma. When I woke up, the only person by my side was Lily, but I couldn't hear anything anymore. The doctor said the impact had ruptured my eardrums, causing deafness. At that time, Lily was still just my girlfriend. Not only did she not leave, but she also took care of me meticulously. Touched by her sincerity, I decided to marry her. This even became a beautiful story, widely circulated for a while. But I never imagined that the life-saving act, the loyalty I perceived, were all part of a carefully calculated scheme. Before I could fully process it, Tom impatiently took out a recorder from his briefcase. He pressed the button, the red light on the recorder immediately lit up. "Ken, do you agree to transfer all company shares to Lily after your death?" Tom's voice couldn't hide his excitement. Lily immediately understood, using sign language to ask me, "Honey, this is a new project that needs your signature for investment approval." Her face remained as gentle as before, as if genuinely seeking my opinion. I couldn't help but laugh coldly inside. Since I became deaf, every time a company decision was made, Lily would translate Tom's words to me via sign language, and I would ultimately sign and stamp, because I always trusted her. But now, who knew how many times they had used this fraudulent trick to profit? No wonder the company, despite just going public, had immediately suffered a severe downturn, with business operations plummeting. Thinking of this, I looked at the smug smiles on their faces, but still didn't expose them. Instead, I smiled and agreed, then skillfully signed and stamped at the bottom of the document. Tom immediately jumped up excitedly, even forgetting to lower his voice, directly mocking me in front of my face. Truly an idiot. Wait until we lure him to the island and get rid of him, then we'll be completely free. Hearing this, I just coldly laughed and sighed. They didn't know that for the past year, the company had been burdened with a massive debt due to their irresponsible and reckless decisions. Just because I didn't want to worry Lily, I had never spoken out. I had been racking my brains over this for a long time, trying to find a way to salvage the situation. But now it was fine. If they wanted the company so much, then I would generously gift them this $100 million debt as well. Anyway, the marriage certificate was fake. I didn't need to bear legal responsibility for this debt. Just faking death, I could escape everything and let this despicable pair pay a heavy price. Thinking of this, I smiled and saw off the two complacent figures, then coldly dialed a friend's number. "Hello, Mark, help me arrange something." Something about staging an accidental death. The other end of the line paused for a moment, then asked, "Where's your wife? Has she gone over yet?" Before he could finish, I interrupted, "No need. I've heard it already." The other end suddenly went silent for a few seconds, then Mark's voice rang out, filled with unbelievable shock. You can hear me talking?" Then came an excited shout, "Damn it, you're cured." "Really? Quick, tell your wife. She'll definitely be overjoyed." I just shook my head. "This matter, keep it secret for now." Mark on the other end became even more anxious. "Why? This is a godsend." I took a deep breath, then told him the whole plan of Lily and Tom, as well as the current situation of the company. The other end was silent for a long time, then immediately an angry roar erupted. "Those two scumbags. They're really taking things too far. Don't worry, leave this to me." Saying this, he immediately hung up. I breathed a sigh of relief, finally resolving a major issue. Picking up my coat, I prepared to leave work and go home, but as I reached the office door, I suddenly stopped. Outside the door wafted in a flattering laugh. "Assistant Tom, is this the latest Patek Philippe? Heard it's over $1 million. Ms. Lily is really good to you." "Haha, what assistant? Before long, our Tom will be the general manager." "Right?" Another voice lowered, sounding slightly worried. "Keep it down. What if General Manager Ken hears?" The leading employee immediately burst into contemptuous laughter. "Hears? He's deaf. For over a year now. He's no different from a puppet. Who in this company doesn't know the real power is in the hands of General Manager Lily and Assistant Tom?" That's right. That's right. "Tom, this is ginseng I brought from my hometown. I'll have to trouble you with the reimbursement of travel expenses later." Looking at the fawning scene outside the door, I stood behind the thin glass door, my eyes coldly piercing. The employee who spoke was Alan, whom I once considered a pillar of the company. He was also a core technical employee I had poured my heart into nurturing. It could be said he was almost my protege. I still remember when he was so poor he couldn't afford tuition. I had especially given him an internship opportunity, personally teaching him advanced techniques far beyond textbook knowledge. Thanks to this, the company had gradually developed strongly, and he had also risen from a poor intern to the position of department head. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath, trying to suppress the anger surging in my heart. Just 1 year, a short year, and he had betrayed me. Not only him, but this entire company, almost everyone, tacitly acknowledged I was just a puppet. Among them, many had once been supported by me. Initially, I thought after getting rid of this mountain of debt, I could lead them to start over. But now, it seemed completely unnecessary. I chuckled coldly, turned around, and left. A bunch of ungrateful wretches, let them go to hell with Lily and Tom. The next morning, Lily even carefully wore gloves and a mask in the humid 30-degree weather. She explained to me that she was afraid the sunlight would damage her skin. Hearing this ridiculous reason, I just secretly laughed coldly in my heart. Clearly, it was because she didn't want to leave any fingerprints or evidence. Along the way, Lily and Tom kept chattering nonstop. I didn't even need to intentionally listen. Their filthy words automatically entered my ears. "My love, once we get the money, we'll go to Maldives, buy a beachfront villa right away, and enjoy the sun." Tom's gloating tone made me feel nauseous. Lily giggled, "Okay, and we also have to hold a grand wedding. I want everyone to know I'm the real boss." "Right. Has that old fool transferred all the shares to you yet?" "Don't worry, darling. Everything's done. Just waiting for his accidental death today." Lily's voice carried a smugness. I maintained a blank face, continuing to drive, only my fingernails on the steering wheel almost digging into my palms. Before long, we arrived at the beach where they planned to kill me. This was a remote area, usually with few visitors. The tide had begun to rise, waves crashing powerfully against the cliffs, creating dull, heavy sounds. Lily couldn't contain her eagerness, pulling me out of the car, saying she wanted to take some photos for memories. I obediently followed her towards the water's edge. Then suddenly, I shouted loudly, "Lily!" My leg cramped. I pretended to struggle in the water, reaching out for help. Whack! Before I could react, I suddenly felt a sharp pain in my head. Lily swung a rock down. A second later, she stepped back, a flash of malice in her eyes. "Looks like fate is on my side too. Ken, die." A large rock ruthlessly smashed down on my head, warm liquid flowing down my forehead. My consciousness gradually blurred, my body being swept away by the sea. Tom's voice rang out, carrying a hint of worry. He swept away. Will people find out? Don't worry, darling, Lily laughed smugly. This is an undeveloped, deserted island. The tide will sweep him straight into the ocean. His body will just become shark bait. I waited until they had completely left before activating my diving gear and slowly surfacing. Mark had been waiting under the sea with full rescue equipment and oxygen tanks. How are you? Not injured. I shook my head, reaching out to wipe the blood from my forehead, laughing coldly. I'm fine, just a minor injury. Mark clenched his fists tightly, so angry that veins bulged on his forehead. Damn it. Although you're safe, the company is still stolen by them. That's your life's work. Watching them gloat, I can't stand it. Should we call the police right away? I shook my head, the corner of my lips curling into a cold smile. No need. With Lily's personality, she'll definitely be eager to hold a grand funeral for me to seize full control of the company. We should also prepare a big gift for her then. Before long, news of my death spread like a virus, sweeping through the entire company. Did you hear? General manager is dead, drowned. Really? Is it true? How could this happen? Heard he went to take photos on an island. Unfortunately, got a cramp and drowned. Around, whispers and discussions arose endlessly. Everyone revealed expressions of shock. Quite a few people were so stunned they dropped the documents in their hands. In just one day, the company's stock price plummeted uncontrollably, like a kite with a broken string, falling straight into the abyss. Lily immediately, under the guise of maintaining company stability, urgently convened a board of directors meeting. The paper with my signature, the fake recording made by Tom, all became sharp weapons in their hands. Everything unfolded exactly as they wished. Lily officially became the new CEO of the company. Her inauguration ceremony attracted a large number of attendees, all coming to flatter and curry favor. My good student, Alan, relying on mastering my core technology, was directly promoted by Lily to the position of vice president. He grinned from ear to ear, incessantly praising General Manager Lily is truly young and talented, a heroine among women, leading us towards a more brilliant future. Hearing his hypocritical flattery, my stomach couldn't help but churn. Finally, Lily stepped onto the podium. Today, she wore a meticulously tailored black suit. On her face was a perfectly crafted expression of grief, just right, neither too excessive nor too cold. Just stepping onto the stage, she pretended to be so heartbroken she choked up, her voice trembling. My husband, his passing, makes me extremely heartbroken. She paused for a moment, took a deep breath, then continued, with a resolute look, if it could be exchanged, I would rather give up these cold shares, give up even this CEO position, just so he could come back to life. I stood in the crowd, looking at her theatrical performance, unable to restrain myself from laughing. The laughter wasn't loud, but in the quiet hall, it immediately attracted everyone's attention. All eyes turned towards me. I slowly walked onto the stage, the corner of my lips carrying a cold smile. Really? If you really think so, how about returning the shares in the CEO position to me? The moment Lily saw me, her face instantly turned as pale as paper. You're still alive? I chuckled. What's wrong? Surprised I wasn't killed? She reflexively wanted to retort, but then suddenly froze. Wait, you can hear? I nodded. At that moment, Tom jumped out, trying to appear strong, but his tone revealed obvious panic. Humph, even if you're lucky enough to survive, recover your hearing, so what? You have no evidence. And maybe you don't know. He smirked, smiling smugly. The documents you signed, the recording of you, all of them aren't investment records at all, but contracts transferring all your shares. Currently, Lily is the one in control of the company. Alan also immediately chimed in, flattering like a loyal hunting dog. That's right. Moreover, all your technology, I've backed it up long ago. I even secretly registered the patents. You're now worthless to the company. Looking at their triumphant appearances, I couldn't help but laugh. Seeing this, Lily slightly curled her lips, looking down at me with contempt. Even at this point, you can still laugh? Do you really think you can turn things around? She paused, her tone full of fake regret. Initially, I even considered giving you a chance to come back to the company as a cleaner. But it seems you don't know what's good for you. In that case, forget it. Immediately after, she raised her hand with scarlet-painted nails, hooking arms with Tom intimately. The two of them stood close together right in front of me. How does it feel to lose everything? Is it very uncomfortable? Pity, I'll never experience that feeling. Oh, right? She smiled charmingly. Next week, Tom and I will hold a wedding. We'll travel around the world. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for being too stupid, still believing in that so-called love nonsense. She burst into laughter, her appearance full of excitement, as if she had already seen a glorious future ahead. I looked at her smug face, just smiled faintly. Is that so? I hope you can still laugh in the next second. Hearing this, Lily frowned slightly. Alert? What do you mean? Before she could ask further, at that very moment, a group of men in black suits suddenly stormed into the inauguration ceremony. The leading man, with sharp eyes, directly swept his gaze towards Lily. You're the CEO of this company, right? At this moment, Lily was still immersed in her upcoming happiness, assuming these were partners coming to congratulate her. She smoothed her hair, revealing a proud smile. Of course. If you gentlemen want to discuss cooperation. Before she could finish speaking, the man swung his hand, a fierce slap landing squarely on her face. Smack. The slap echoed loudly in the silent hall. Before anyone could react, the man pulled out a stack of promissory notes with red seals from his coat pocket, throwing them directly at Lily's face. Damn it. Got money to put on this charade, but owing $1 billion and refusing to pay on time? Huh? If you don't pay off this money today, I'll show you what hell is like. The whole hall erupted. Lily stared blankly at the pile of documents in front of her, her voice trembling as she asked, You've made a mistake, right? $1 billion? $1 billion in goods? Could it be you found the wrong person? Her voice trembled, her eyes filled with fear. The man angrily swung his hand, another slap landing. Smack. This slap was even harder than the last, blood oozing from the corner of Lily's mouth, her whole body staggering. Humph, trying to play dumb and evade debt, huh? He grabbed her hair, pulling her head back, forcing her to look straight at him. Open your eyes wide and see. Is this seal from your company? Lily trembled, taking the stack of documents, her eyes scanning through each line of text. Just a second later, her face instantly turned deathly pale. This is indeed the company's seal. The next moment, seemingly realizing something, she suddenly raised her head, her eyes filled with despair, looking towards me. You knew about this long ago, right? You knew, but deliberately didn't say anything, didn't you? You orchestrated all of this to harm me, didn't you? I looked at her collapsing figure, feeling not a shred of pity in my heart, only extreme satisfaction. Finally, I had waited for this day, but on my face, I feigned an innocent, naive look. I blinked, pretending to be clueless. Big brother, I used to be deaf. I pointed to my ear, then pointed to Lily and Tom. You also heard it just now. I'm just a puppet. I don't know anything. It's all they're doing. I acted aggrieved, as if I had just suffered a great injustice. Lily and Tom instantly froze on the spot. They never imagined my previous deafness would become my shield at this moment. They had, themselves, dug their own graves. Tom's face darkened, wanting to speak in defense, but the words reached his mouth and then froze. He didn't know how to open his mouth. After all, he had previously announced to the outside world that I was ill, and all company affairs were handled by Lily on my behalf. Now, that lie had turned into the sharpest knife, stabbing straight into their hearts. Lily's whole body trembled, so angry she almost fainted. She never thought I could counterattack so perfectly. She raised her hand, pointing directly at me, but couldn't utter a complete sentence. The debt collector, seeing this scene, became even more certain she was deliberately stalling for time. He snorted coldly, waving his hand to order, "Surround them." Immediately, a group of burly bodyguards rushed in, tightly surrounding the entire area. The atmosphere in the hall suddenly became suffocatingly tense. At this moment, Lily completely panicked. She had thought that as long as she became CEO, she would have everything in her grasp. But before she could enjoy the glory of victory, she had immediately fallen into a greater crisis. She trembled, looking at me, her eyes filled with despair. "Ken, why are you doing this to me?" Her voice trembled, trying to use morality to bind me. "We were once husband and wife, knew each other for 10 years. Why are you so heartless?" I looked at her hypocritical face, feeling only amusement in my heart. Wife and husband. Did she even have the face to say those words? I recalled the beautiful days when I was in love with her, a trace of nostalgia flashing in my eyes. But immediately after, I quickly regained my composure, coldly saying, "Back then, when we were in school, The feelings between me and you were indeed very good, but in the end, it turned out to be just a scam. You are not worthy to say these words to me. My words were like a sharp blade, piercing through her mask of hypocrisy. Lily's face turned pale, her lips trembling, but she couldn't refute a word. Around, the audience began to whisper, every gaze focusing on her, carrying suspicion and indignation. The atmosphere was becoming increasingly unfavorable for Lily. At this moment, Tom also panicked. He had originally thought that as long as he clung to Lily, he could rise to the top in one step, with power and money in hand. But now, the springboard he relied on, before it could even solidify, was about to collapse. Tom glared at me with hatred, his voice filled with venom. Kin, you're being too childish, completely disregarding the big picture. Moreover, have you forgotten something? Your marriage to Lily hasn't been dissolved yet. Half of her debt, you also have to bear. Hearing this, I just laughed even louder. Both Lily and Tom were dumbfounded. They didn't understand why I, about to be crushed by a massive debt, could still laugh. After a long moment, I finally took out a document from my pocket, precisely the fake marriage certificate of me and Lily. My eyes were full of mockery. Lily, have you forgotten? Our marriage certificate is fake. As soon as my words fell, Lily's face instantly turned ashen white, as if struck by lightning, her whole body stiffening. Her mouth opened, but she couldn't utter a word. She trembled, raising a finger, pointing at me, her whole hand shaking so uncontrollably, even worse than a late-stage Parkinson's patient. You, how did you know? Could it be you recovered your hearing long ago? Her voice rose sharply, piercing like fingernails scratching a blackboard, making listeners shudder. I just secretly smiled in my heart, but on the surface, still appeared calm, unwavering. You don't need to worry about this. Better yet, worry about how to solve the company's massive debt. Seeing the situation was completely unfavorable, my good student, Alan, immediately rolled his eyes, devising a plan. His eyes darted around as fast as beads on an abacus, then in the blink of an eye, he immediately changed his attitude. Thump. He knelt down in front of me, his face contorted, tears and snot streaming down his face, looking no different from someone who had just lost their parents. Teacher, I was wrong. He sobbed and sniffled, his voice whining as if he had been greatly wronged. Teacher, before, I was threatened by them. I had no other choice. In my heart, I still deeply respect you, teacher. I agreed to help them, only to infiltrate their ranks, to find an opportunity to avenge you. Teacher. He cried pitifully, his acting skills comparable to an Oscar winner. But watching him act, I only felt amused. With such acting skills, not going to be an actor is truly a waste of talent. If I hadn't personally heard him mocking me as a puppet, I might have almost believed him. Human nature is indeed more unfathomable than the ocean floor. Lily and Tom standing beside were completely petrified. These two looked no different from two chickens plucked clean, standing forlornly in place, not knowing what to do. You dare to betray me at this moment. Tom was so angry that his whole body trembled, raising a finger to point at Alan, but his mouth couldn't utter a complete sentence. He couldn't believe the plan he had painstakingly arranged. In the end, not only was it ruined by me, but even his most trusted pawn dared to turn against him. But I never intended to forgive Alan. I sighed softly, reaching into my coat pocket, taking out a small recorder. Just gently pressing the button, a familiar recording rang out in the quiet hall. That deaf fool is just a puppet, doesn't know anything. Wait until Ms. Lily and Tom take control, then our glorious era will truly begin. As the recording continued to play, Alan's face grew paler and paler. He panicked so much that his hands clenched tightly, his eyes darting around, not daring to look directly at me. General Manager Ken, I can explain. He stammered, his voice trembling like a child caught stealing candy. But I just shook my head, my eyes ice cold. I remember telling you before, people must be responsible for their choices. Walking in Jianghu, the world of business/society. Sooner or later, you have to pay the price. Alan fell silent, his face as white as death. He knew this time he had no way out. Alan seemed to have fallen into despair. But immediately after, he suddenly burst into maniacal laughter. The laughter was sharp, piercing, and jarring, making others shudder. So what if I bear the debt? Don't forget that now you are nothing. As long as I make a move, I can make you completely blacklisted. By then, who lives and who dies is still unknown. His eyes were filled with ferocity like a cornered beast. Lily also regained her senses, as if having grasped a lifeline. She snapped loudly, "That's right, Ken. As long as I give the order as CEO, you will be blocked from every avenue of business. Compared to both sides perishing, why not work together to figure out how to solve the debt?" Her tone was extremely certain, as if everything was still under her control. But I just leisurely took out a business card from my vest pocket, handing it to Lily. "I've joined the Thriving Group, holding the position of vice president. These matters, you don't need to worry about." Lily took the business card, her expression stiff, as if she had just swallowed a fly. She looked at the words on the business card, her whole body petrified. Thriving Group? This was the leading group in the industry, the name she had yearned to cooperate with. Yet now, her ex-husband had become the vice president of Thriving Group. The atmosphere in the room instantly froze. The surrounding shareholders stared at me, so shocked their mouths gaped wide enough to fit an egg. Thriving Group, a shareholder stammered, reading each word on the business card. Another even rubbed his eyes repeatedly, as if seeing things. Ken is vice president. Their voices trembled, carrying extreme astonishment. In my heart, I felt extremely refreshed, but on the outside, I still maintained a calm demeanor, just smiled faintly. This effect was even better than I imagined. Lily, as if struck by lightning, her whole body completely dazed. She stiffly held the business card in her hand, her eyes blankly staring at the words on it. Thriving Group, the organization she had always longed to cooperate with, yet now her ex-husband had become the vice president of this group. To her, this was no different from a thunderbolt from the blue. You, how could you?" Her voice trembled, incredibly disbelieving. I chuckled softly, leisurely speaking. "Actually, Thriving Group had intended to acquire my company a long time ago. They highly valued my technology and management philosophy and even offered very attractive conditions. But at that time, I liked freedom, didn't want to be bound, so I refused. Only when the company was ruined by you two, the capital chain broken, did I agree to join Thriving Group. Fortunately, they still appreciate my abilities, not only appointing me as vice president, but also granting me tens of millions in investment funds. For me, this is also a new beginning." As soon as I finished speaking, Lily's face became even uglier. She gritted her teeth, her eyes filled with hatred, looking at me as if about to explode at any moment. So you had already prepared a way out. No wonder you acted so ruthlessly." Her voice was sharp as a knife, cutting straight into my heart. But I just laughed coldly in my heart. Compared to what you have done to me, is this even worth mentioning? Just at this moment, the impatient debt collector rudely interrupted her words. "Stop talking nonsense, quickly pay the money." His rude tone pulled Lily back to reality. She trembled, her face revealing obvious panic. I don't have money." The debt collector immediately sneered. "A CEO of a listed company, and you say you don't have money?" He narrowed his eyes, his gaze fierce, looking like he wanted to devour her alive. The group of debt collectors immediately tightened their encirclement. Lily was so scared she kept retreating, her face pale. "What do you want to do?" No one answered. The group of debt collectors just stepped closer, their imposing aura pressing in. Seeing they were about to act, Lily finally couldn't withstand it anymore. She completely collapsed. I have money. I'll pay right now." Lily frantically took out a card from her bag, hurriedly handing it to the group of debt collectors. The debt collector took it, swiped it once, then immediately glared angrily. "Only a few tens of millions. Are you kidding me?" His voice became even fiercer, flames of anger erupting in his eyes. Lily was so scared that her whole body trembled, tears continuously falling. Really, only this much left." The other funds were all taken by Ken. She suddenly raised her hand, pointing at me, crying pitifully, as if I was the greatest sinner in the world. I was stunned for a moment. This woman, even to death, wouldn't give up her tricks. Even now, she still wanted to frame me. I took a deep breath, trying to suppress the anger in my heart. My cold voice echoing, "Lily, do you still have any shame? When did I take your money?" My voice carried no emotion, only icy coldness. Lily cried even louder, acting as if she had just suffered the greatest injustice. It's you who took my money. Return my money to me." I frowned. The bank card was still in her hand. How could I have taken her money? Lily cried and yelled, her voice hoarse, "It's just you. The phone number registered to the card is mine. The password, only the two of us know. If it wasn't you secretly withdrawing money, why would there be no money left in the card?" She wailed and accused, her appearance as if she was the most pitiful victim in the world. I glanced at Tom, and indeed, he didn't disappoint me. Immediately, he jumped out, his face full of righteous indignation, raising a hand to point at me and shouting, "Ken, you are truly too vicious. Lily trusted you so much, yet you heartlessly took all her money." He shook his head, appearing heartbroken, as if I had just done something unforgivable. I just laughed coldly in my heart. Acting skills like this, not competing for an Oscar, is truly a pity. The surrounding shareholders began to whisper, their gazes towards me gradually shifting from suspicion to doubt. The group of debt collectors became even more angry, glaring at me, as if as long as I had an illogical explanation, they would tear me to pieces on the spot. I took a deep breath, suppressing the disgust in my heart, the corner of my lips curling into a cold smile. Really? Then this matter is also simple. Checking the bank transaction history, wouldn't we immediately know where the money went? Hearing these words, Lily's face instantly turned deathly pale, a flash of panic in her eyes. Clearly her weak point had been hit. You're deliberately stalling for time," she stammered, her voice trembling. "Surely you are using the time to check transactions to secretly call the police, right?" I sneered in my heart. Call the police? Why should I do that? I even wished this matter to be as noisy as possible, so that everyone could clearly see their true colors. But just as people say, whoever cries first easily gains the upper hand. That debt collector, hearing this, again suspected me. "Humph, stop talking nonsense. Whoever it is, quickly pay the money here. If not, I'll chop off your hand first." He raised a fist as big as a bowl, waving it in front of me as a warning. I just smiled faintly, my eyes full of contempt. "Just checking the transaction history. What's the big deal? Let me show you." Saying this, I took out my phone, opened the bank app, found the transaction history, then handed it to the group of debt collectors. All my movements were very calm, without a trace of panic, as if everything was within my expectations. The debt collector took the phone, carefully viewing the transaction history. The people behind him also crowded around, watching along. Their faces gradually became serious, their eyes filled with doubt. In the transaction history, the majority of the funds in the card were used for company operations. A considerable portion was even directly transferred to Lily's personal account, completely no sign showing I had withdrawn or spent the money. The surrounding shareholders also successively crowded around to watch, their gazes towards me gradually shifting from suspicion to shock, and then to indignation. They turned to look at Lily and Tom, their eyes filled with contempt and disgust. The faces of those two people instantly turned ashen white as blank paper. Where did you get this?" Lily stammered, panicking so much she couldn't control her voice. I just laughed coldly. "After all, this card belongs to me. I had long anticipated you would resort to framing. Because a cornered dog will leap over a wall, a rabbit driven to desperation will also bite. So, right after faking death, I immediately went to the bank to check the entire transaction history. I printed out all the evidence, prepared and ready for when needed. Sure enough, today is the time for them to come into play." The group of debt collectors, after viewing the statement, immediately realized they had been deceived, their anger erupting. A burly man with scars all over his face immediately grabbed Lily's collar, roaring angrily. "Where's the money?" he roared, spittle flying all over her face. Lily's face flushed red. She tried to struggle, but how could she escape his vice-like grip? I don't have it." She managed to utter a few words, her eyes filled with fear. I stood to one side, coldly watching this scene, not having a trace of pity. Everything that happened today was all brought on by herself. I turned around and left, not bothering to look back for even a second, because I had even more important things to do. News of Lily owing over $1 billion quickly spread throughout the business world. Companies that had previously intended to cooperate immediately canceled contracts, causing the company to completely stagnate. Goods produced piled up, unsold inventory accumulated. Employees who had once supported Lily and Tom now also flocked to their homes to demand wages and rights. Truly a scene of when the ship sinks, everyone for themselves. Society has always been this realistic. With no way out, Lily could only bow her head and seek me out. This time, she completely changed her attitude, becoming gentle and obedient like a little cat. "Ken, I bought you a gift." She smiled, handing me a carefully wrapped gift box. I took it, opened it to see. Inside was a Min's watch. Just a glance, I immediately recognized this was exactly the watch she had once given to Tom. Since losing my hearing, my vision and observation skills had become much sharper than before. Details, no matter how small, couldn't escape my eyes. I chuckled coldly, without hesitation, throwing the gift box directly into the trash can. If you have something to say it directly. My voice was cold, carrying no emotion. The smile on Lily's face slightly stiffened, but she still tried to maintain composure, softly pleading, can you help me say a word to Thriving Group? Ask them to stand guarantor so the company can maintain cooperation. I can give up the CEO position and shares, 3/7, even 9/10. It's not a problem, as long as I can manage to repay the debt. Her voice carried pleading, but I didn't bother to respond. Seeing my silence, she continued to probe, or, do you need Tom to apologize? As long as you are willing to help me, I'll let him apologize to you. Before waiting for my reply, she had already pulled Tom out. That guy bowed his head, reluctantly spitting out a sentence. Sorry, is that okay? His tone was stiff, completely without sincerity. Before I could even speak, Lily hurriedly spoke soothingly to him. Tom, I know you're feeling wronged, but with Thriving Group as guarantor, once the company recovers, I will definitely compensate you. Looking at their appearances, I couldn't help but laugh coldly. You two can apologize, but did I say I would help? Hearing this, Lily's face instantly changed. She frowned tightly, looking at me, full of incomprehension. Ken, what exactly do you want? Her eyes reddened, as if she was the one suffering the greatest injustice in the world. Tom and I have already been punished and already apologized to you. Is that still not enough? She took a deep breath, her eyes glistening as if about to cry. I looked at that hypocritical face, feeling only disgust to the extreme. Before, I loved her, once thought she had endured a lot of grievances because of me, so always tolerated and forgave. But now, I didn't even bother to reply, just silently looking at her as if watching a clown perform. Seeing my silence, Lily acted even more pitifully. You've changed so much. Before you weren't this petty. You weren't like this. In my heart, I couldn't help but scoff. Petty? She harmed me, made me lose my hearing. She almost took my life. She made my company drown in debt. Now she turned around to accuse me of being petty? This was truly the most ridiculous joke I had ever heard in my life. I opened my mouth, wanting to say something, but then realized all words at this moment became superfluous. I didn't want to waste more breath on her. Seeing my reaction, Lily bit her lip, seemingly considering a major decision. As long as you agree to save the company, I can fire Tom. I will sever all ties with him. As she spoke, she secretly glanced at Tom. That guy instantly panicked, jumping up, his voice full of disbelief. Lily, you intend to abandon me? His eyes reddened, filled with resentment. Lily turned to look at him, a flash of warning in her eyes, but also mixed with some reassurance. Tom froze for a moment, then seemingly understanding something, lowered his head, pretending to shed tears, then angrily slammed the door and left. Watching this, I only felt amused. Such a clumsy farce, yet they could still act it out in front of me? Could it be they thought I didn't know all their actions were within my control? But Lily thought she was acting too perfectly, so smugly continued to put on a sentimental act. Ken, you see? For you, I've cut ties with Tom. From now on, in my heart, there will only be you. I laughed coldly. Your so-called love also includes deliberately causing an accident to pierce my eardrums? My words were like a thunderbolt exploding beside her ears. Lily's face instantly turned deathly pale, the forced smile freezing on her lips. She stared wide-eyed at me, her lips trembling, but unable to utter a word. How did you know about that? I chuckled coldly. Looks like you just admitted it yourself. Lily froze, realizing she had just slipped up. She hurriedly shook her head, her tone panicking. No, it's not like that, Ken. Let me explain. That was an accident. Truly an accident. She spoke incoherently, her eyes darting around, not daring to look directly at me. Her face flushed red like a ripe tomato, but not from shame, but from extreme fear. I didn't bother to reply, just coldly took out a document from my briefcase, throwing it directly onto the table. Thump! The document fell onto the marble table, making a crisp sound. On it was a medical Jinding Bao Gao assessment report, proving that my eardrums were not damaged by accident impact, but were deliberately pierced by a sharp object. Lily stared blankly at the document, her whole body suddenly shrinking back, as if her soul had been sucked away. Her legs went limp, collapsing to the floor, without a trace of strength. Her face was terrifyingly pale, like a corpse without breath. Ken, I was wrong. She trembled, speaking in a terrified voice. At that time, I was possessed by demons. I was blinded. Later, I will return to being a good wife. Will take good care of you. Please don't send me to jail, okay? Saying this, she reached out, wanting to grab my sleeve, but without hesitation, I flung her hand away. These words, save them to say in front of the judge. Finishing my words, I turned around and left, without any lingering attachment. Everything finally came to an end. Alan, the one who was once a brilliant student whom I wholeheartedly nurtured, was ostracized by the entire business world, becoming a name absolutely forbidden in all companies. From a promising young talent, he fell straight into the abyss, becoming someone despised by everyone. As for Lily, with complete evidence of her crimes, she was arrested for attempted murder. Not only that, she was also burdened with a massive debt. Not only did she lose the company, Lily's entire property was also confiscated by the court. Everything valuable in her house was seized, nothing left. Even her parents heartlessly severed ties, not wanting to be involved with her anymore. But even more miserable was that the massive debt was still not repaid. The group of debt collectors had planted people inside the prison to take care of her. They even forced her to sign a contract of indenture. After being released from prison, she would have to continue working to repay the debt for them, for a lifetime unable to rise up. As for Tom, I heard he was sold directly to a forced labor camp in Southeast Asia to do hard labor to repay debt, living a life worse than death. As for me, thanks to many years of accumulated experience and skills, I quickly seized new opportunities, expanding into another business field. I was promoted to the position of Regional General Manager of Asia Pacific of the group, with a bright and promising future. Thinking of this, I held a glass of champagne, standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, gazing down at the panoramic view of the city, in my heart, no longer a ripple. Everything had ended. From now on, I would live a new life.